Right. Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing? Review. Shall we start with some meditation as usual? Yeah, d'accord. Okay, so let's sit for half an hour. I'll set the clock, give a bit of instruction, and then we'll go for it. William, can you mute yourself? Great. So, set up your posture, whatever way you like to meditate. Just notice when you just pause and even set up your meditation, you touch the silence of awareness, which is always there. So that's what we're doing, meditation, remembering the silence of knowing, the silence of being, presence, awareness, whatever you want to call it. So listen to sound and emphasize the listening. Receptive listening. And notice the silence of awareness. So we're not, this isn't an effort to achieve anything. It's more an effort to remember something that's always here. Feel your breathing. There's the silence of knowing. Feel an in-breath. So an in and out breathing, there's the silence of knowing. Go back to sound. Listen to sound. What sounds come to you? And the same silence of knowing. So use your meditation to sustain this quality of awareness. So it's about the listening, the knowing, rather than the breath or the sound itself. So listen to sound. Irrespective of the quality of sound, there is the listening, the knowing. Emphasize that. And then with the breath, same way. Feel the breathing. Irrespective of the quality of breathing, emphasize the silent awareness. Go back to sound. Listening. Perceive sound as in awareness, rather than the sound is out there and you are in here. Change the perception that the sound is in awareness. Feel the breathing, rather than you being in the body. Breath is in awareness. And then notice that sound, breath are both in awareness. So what is there an outer limit to awareness? Can you find an edge, an outer edge? Or a center? Can you find a kind of fixed center of awareness? So these exercises emphasize knowing the knowing, aware of awareness. Return to the breath. Now sustain that awareness by welcoming an in-breath and letting go with the out-breath. But sustain awareness which is broad and open and welcoming, not controlling, highly focused, tense, just very open. So welcome an in-breath, let go with the out-breath, be the knowing. So a brief instruction, let's sit quietly for the rest of the meditation.
Luang Por, we request for Dhamma talk now.
Okay,
Brahma Chaloka Dipati Sahampati Ka'atan Jali Anand Divaram Ayachata Tanti Dasata Paraja Kajatika Dese tu Dhamma Anukam Pimam Pajam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassa. Hello again. We have a very exciting time right now at Tisarana. Luang Por Viradhammo has arrived for a month-long visit, and we met him at the airport yesterday, and it was so nice to see him. And Ajahn Asoko, he was here, I think, in 2019, last time. So we're very honored that he's come. Friends have come from Hawaii and Toronto and Michigan and Gatineau and other places, California as well. So we don't get very many guests, and with COVID even fewer. So we have a sort of foolish room, which is very, very sweet, very nice. And when Luang Por came out of the immigration, when he came into the foyer of the airport, he was pushed by a young woman of Indian extraction, and later on she said she was from the Sikh tradition. And it was really, really nice. She had that sense of deference to a great teacher, great master, and so she took Luang Por all the way to the parking lot. And she was very fast. I couldn't keep up with her. But when we reached the car, Luang Por, we helped Luang Por out of the wheelchair, and she said, "Oh, could you offer me blessings?" And that's just so touching that here it is in Toronto Airport, Luang Por's parami and this woman's parami comes together in this lovely way. And that, of course, happens to Luang Por a lot, because he's a great being. So that's, and Luang Por, if you had X-ray vision, and you look through this wall behind me, you can see him. So go for it. But I don't think you can. He's sitting there talking with Amarasiri and Ajahn Stoku. I've known Luang Por since probably 1973 or 1974. So I have this great fortune, good fortune to have two, among many teachers, but to have Luang Por Cha and Luang Por Sumedho as my guiding teachers. And so I'm very fortunate, God. And he continues to inspire me and edify me. And we share Dhamma, really significant Dhamma talks plus gossip to both spectrums of human reality. And Luang Por Sumedho has always emphasized what attracted me to him among the many qualities he has was throughout the worldly situations that we've been in together, he's always emphasized the transcendent teaching, the realization of Nibbana, the unconditioned, the uncreated, and unoriginated, the unformed. And that's really why I entered the monastic order. I didn't enter the order to be a Buddhist or even to be a monk, although I love the life and I love Buddhism. But the aspiration was something which was not about conventions or culture or even history. And Luang Por's emphasis on that has been always kept me on track. And I'm talking with him now, and you could see because his senses aren't that acute anymore. His vision is not so great, and his hearing's not so great. I think his appetite's still pretty good, but correct? That's what I've heard. But it's like, because the world is no longer terribly interesting, and he's developed the capacity of silence, that's his favorite point of reference. So he was saying when he travels in an airplane, all the modern gadgets that exist in the airplane, the things where you plug in your earplugs and the television screen and all of that, he can't see the buttons. So he's a bit lost through that. But then he's not really terribly interested. And so he sits and listens to silence for the 5-hour plane ride, and which then he says is timeless. And to do that, it takes quite a skill to listen to silence, because silence doesn't have the attraction of beauty or the distraction of pain. So it doesn't really have a quality. It doesn't have a sense quality in the same way that a sweet glass of tea has, or a sour lemon has. It doesn't draw you in the same way. And to incline towards the silence of the mind is it's not common. It's not common at all, obviously. And it's very subtle, because it's the capacity to witness the beauty and ugliness of sense experience and not be drawn into it compulsively or through excitement or through aversion. It takes a lot of training to come to that. It takes a lot of training, a lot of trust and awareness. And yet we need to be drawn into sense experience because we have responsibilities. If our kids are suffering from COVID, we have to pay attention to that. We have to take care of them and make sure they're okay. Or if we have a flat tire, you have to take care of that. So the life of a contemplative is grounded in just the practicalities of reality. It's not a negation or a quietism where you're trying to get away from anything, although quietness is very, very helpful. So the kind of emphasis on our training as monks is to really do the worldly dharma as well, to really be a good monk in the conventional sense of it, to care for one's elders and to care for the monastery and to work hard physically or intellectually or however. But then within that, not making the conventions of, say, my livelihood as a monk. So I practice like right livelihood as a monk. You practice right livelihood as a lay practitioner. But to realize that is simply a foundation for good living and a necessary, very, very necessary. Because if you don't get that right, there's so much confusion. But then what do you do with the foundation of good living? Is that it? Is it just about being a good person? Well, no, it's more than that. It's more than that. But being a good person is necessary. Being a nasty, mean person isn't going to get you very far in terms of peace. But we do experience nastiness and aversion. And that's the great challenge of contemplative life, is that, as I always say, we're all good people. We aspire to very high values and high ideals, and we honor those who live by those ideals, and we read texts about that. So we're constantly given the highest kinds of teachings and the highest kinds of attitudes and the highest representations of personal relationship. But as human beings, we're not always there. We don't like each other. Oftentimes we feel negative, or we feel intimidated or jealous or lack self-confidence. And how to deal with all of that and to keep the aspiration alive for the transcendent is, the question isn't that we have to be a kind of inwardly constantly good person, because that's not possible. And that's an idea which really messes us up. But rather it's to refer to awareness is where transcendence is, not emotions aren't transcendent. And where we often get caught is we don't know how to just allow negativity to be negativity. I think in the beginning, when we come into this life, I don't know about you, but for me, there's lots of very gross anger and gross fear and a lot of sort of emotional dramas that I had to endure and witness. So there, the containment of right speech and the containment of being a responsible person is so very helpful. But when you've worked through those more passionate kind of emotions, and you come to a sort of pretty okay, balanced way of being, there still comes up negative things, still not, complaining about something or worried about your health. And so negativity and negative perceptions are very natural things. They come and they go according to character, according to culture, cultural conditioning, according to the weather, and all the rest of it. So we're not trying in transcendence. And that's why I think I like the word transcendence. We're not trying to be happy all the time. Although we'd like that, like emotionally happy, it'd be nice to be in some state of emotional happiness all the time, but that's not how the mind works, is it? And if I set myself up thinking that transcendence is being a particular emotional quality all the time, then I'm setting myself up for disaster. So one of the things that Luang Por has always taught, and Luang Por Sumedho has always taught, and I've appreciated a lot, is very simple language, profound, where he, as you know, he says, it's like this. That is such a profound statement of reality, but that's not something that you believe in. You have to do. It's like this. You have to do. It's like this. Well, what do? You listen. You stop. You notice the silence of the mind. And conjoined with that, he often uses, and it all belongs. Now, it all belongs is a way of accepting into the mind negativity and pain and all of that in the spectrum of human experience. Now, when it all belongs, it's in the stream of consciousness. It's not in the stream of social justice. In social justice issues or issues of environment or issues of personal relationship, if I would say it all belongs, then you could excuse abusive behavior. It all belongs. Abusive behavior is part of life. No. Yeah, it might be a part of life, but as good citizens on this planet, we say, you can't do that. That's wrong. That's wrong to do. So we have like social responsibility, and we celebrate the rule of law, and we do things, we say things, that's wrong. That's not right. It's inappropriate. We mustn't do that in so many ways. And that is the social strata of our life. But when we come together like this, I feel that my job, as it were, or my contemplation in these Zoom communities is not so much about those issues, because there's lots that goes on about issues about social justice, and I read about that, but I don't feel like I'm an expert. So I'm referring more to stream of consciousness, and within stream of consciousness, we all get like domineering or aggressive or kinds of things. And with right action and right speech, we try not to act on it. But we have to accept them into the mind. Otherwise, we'll never realize the transcendent realization of peace. We'll always be in a sense of judgment and trying to create or trying to be a better person. Now, if a person wasn't on board with that, the subtlety of that, and they were quite criminal in their behavior and quite cruel in their behavior, then this kind of talk would not be helpful. The talk would be more about, keep precepts, don't hurt, stop exploiting people. The language would be like that. But I don't feel that our group is really exploitive or cruel. I feel most people are actually really quite kind and generous. So I think the problem isn't so much indulging negativity, it's actually suppressing it or trying to get rid of it. And Luang Por's words, like it all belongs, there's many ways that teachers talk about that. Like if you feel negative about someone and you say it all belongs, the idea is that it opens your mind to choiceless awareness or the silence of the mind, rather than the kind of closing down and trying to be a better person. It's not wrong to be a better person, but it can be a real trap to try to be the perfect person with the perfect emotions. If one just indulges in like harmful speech and just being critical all the time, then the call is, no, you practice right speech. Speech which is in concord, speech which is sensitive, speech which is truthful, speech which is not hurtful, speech which brings harmony. Practice that. Don't just follow your moods and dump your moods on everyone. So there is that, and that's very, very important in Buddhist life, because if I'm not mindful enough of speech, then the results are even worse. The results are confusion and mistrust and remorse and regret. But that's pretty gross. If like speech is pretty kind of gross part of practice. Right speech then has a lot of restraint in it. I pause before I say the critical thing, but oftentimes I can say a critical thing and I don't pause, and maybe my speech is not the best it is. And that's the moment where we tend to be self-judgmental. And that's the moment you say that belongs to, even my mistakes belong, even my foolish words, that belongs to. But I try. I try to be a better person. I try to speak correctly. But even that saying something unkind or unpleasant is also, that belongs, because then we keep opening up into the true compassion of the mind, which accepts this whole range of human experience. You can't be perfect. It just doesn't work that way. And yet you try to do your very best to say things appropriately. There's a teacher who I have been inspired with for many, many years, and he is from the Advaita tradition, and his name is Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he has a quotation which is quite astounding, actually, for me, because I saw this quotation. I think I read the book in 1973, one of those books that I just read overnight, I could put down. And in that book, he says, in a longer paragraph about his own realization, and I think he's a realized being, he said that, and he uses a sense of self in a different way that we do in Buddhism. And just to go back, there is a thing about contemplative practices, which is not about belief, concepts and conceptual structures and all of that. That's about belief. But the contemplative life is more about perception, playing with perception. So when I say to you, sound is in awareness, I'm not asking a belief that you have some kind of belief of super consciousness and nothing like that. It's just a way of perceiving something, perceiving in a different way. Sound is an awareness. The body is an awareness. And when you play with the perceptions like that, it creates attitudes which are very helpful. For me, that instruction creates a tremendous amount of space. Or if I say to you, awareness, does it have a boundary? Does it have a center? Where's the furthest edge? Can you find an edge? That's emphasizing awareness and knowing rather than a particular experience. And that emphasis then creates a perception of space and non-grasping. So and if you think you have to believe in that, then you're just in thought. You're not really using perception. We use the perception of anicca, of change. So you're feeling upset about something and you introduce the perception, this is changing. That creates space in the mind, doesn't it? It's not a belief. It's not that. It's like a way of using perception and thought to actually give a real result right now to your contemplative life. So back to this teaching. The perception he offers is, and I don't know if this works in a Buddhist context, but here we go. Love says, I'm everything. Wisdom says, I'm nothing. And, okay, do that like love says I am everything. When I create that perception in my mind, and I don't go to, Buddhist Abhidhamma philosophy or something. It's not about that. It's about using language which I have received from a master. I feel he's a master. And then I experiment with it. I experiment. So when I say, love says I am everything. Now, as a Buddhist, you say, well, there's no self. How could you say that? And that's just thought. But that's not contemplation. And then your mind just runs off into the Buddhist ideas and all your conditioning, and then you just have a belief. You have a position, which isn't a bad position, but it's still, this is different. This is different. This is actually using language to create a sort of enigmatic possibility. So when I was using this the last few weeks, and so just noticing that if I have a perception of which is coming from negativity about something, the monastery, the monks, or myself, usually about myself, and I say, love says that I'm everything, that's the same as it all belongs. That just opens my heart. It all belongs. Love says I'm everything. And the sense of duality falls away, I find. I don't know what you find. You have to do your own searching. And then the other is that wisdom says I'm nothing. Now that fits in with anatta. That fits in with sunyata, that kind of language. And yet if you say there's nothing, that's not, there is consciousness, isn't there? There is aware, there is knowing. So the danger with the anatta teaching is like, it sounds nihilistic. There's nothing. Well, I don't know, something's going on. It's not nothing. And yet, and so these two perceptions that love says I am everything brings me to an openness to this moment. And then wisdom says there's nothing, points to the silence of knowing. Now, again, I don't know if that would work for you, but the introduction, either that language or Luang Por's language, it all belongs, is very, very important because of Vibhavatana. If we go back to Buddhist dogma, then we have the problem of Vibhavatanha. And Vibhavatanha is the desire to get rid of. And that's very insidious. It's very, very deep in the structures of our aspiration, because our aspiration is towards happiness and perfection, but we misunderstand by thinking that perfection is some emotional perfection. No, that the emotions are not perfect. They're sankharas. They're imperfect. They're anicca dukkha anatta. If we go back to the language of Buddhism, to the dogma of Buddhism, or the structures of Buddhism. So then the perception of not self sometimes gets used as a rejection. This is not me, not mine, a rejection, but it's still in consciousness. So there is a tendency among meditators to just judge themselves, try to get rid of stuff, and not notice that. That might be going on all the time. And then the heart's not very open. It's not very happy. But when you realize that negative emotions and all these things and vipaka come of that are simply in stream of consciousness, and your reference is no longer the quality of your emotions. Doesn't matter. Speech, yeah, that matters. The quality of speech matters. But if you feel really negative towards your kids or towards your neighbor or towards yourself, these are just stuff. It's just stuff coming and going, and it all belongs. Love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing. And the contemplative life is leading to silence. It's not leading to intellectual analysis or strategizing how you're going to get enlightened. That's the stuff of sankharas. But the transcendent project is actually very, very simple. It's very simple. It comes to silence, it comes to knowing, it comes to trusting. But that knowing is not a demand that you have a certain quality of emotion. It's not like the idea in Buddhism quite often is that you have metta for all beings all the time. Anyone do that last week? Did you have metta for yourself? Is that a reality, or is that some kind of weird ideal that we have? But what if metta was not an emotion, but actually was a component of awareness? What if metta isn't about me liking you? Rather, it's the open-hearted awareness which says that it all belongs. That which arises ceases. That which has a nature to arise has a nature to cease, and it all belongs. The good, bad, and the ugly, the beautiful, and so on. Well, then that makes your very perception of the word metta different. The teachings on metta tend to be used in a dualistic way or in a transcendent way. In the dualistic way, so I say, may I be well, may you be well, may William be well, may Karina be well, may Vita be well, and I localize my attention and maybe pray or whatever. So that's the way it's taught in a dualistic way. But in the transcendent way, it is actually more about awareness. Awareness which accepts all things, rejects none. It all belongs. Love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing. And I think that balance quite often gets missed among meditators. That balance of the heart, that balance of openness, of acceptance, and allowing things to come and to go and not getting caught in our judgments. I think that's, so when you just take anicca dukkha anatta, it might be very, very powerful. It is very, very powerful perception. But sometimes there's a kind of hidden vibhavatana, hidden self-judgment, hidden aversion that we don't notice. We don't notice vibhavatanha as anicca dukkha anatta. We don't notice the very desire to get rid of as anicca dukkha. We take that as a reality. I shouldn't be this way. I should get rid of that. And that can be very, very quick, very, very quick. It doesn't even have to be a thought process. It just be a kind of reaction. So my sense of the word metta in terms of loving kindness it is certainly a personal feeling. So when I see Luang Por at the airport, I feel tremendous love for the man and others, and so on. So there is that aspect, which is very, very beautiful in the human heart, but I can't always feel that. You know, sometimes I feel things which I'm glad that no one knows what I'm feeling, and I'm sure you're the same way too. And that's okay, isn't it? That's okay, because I can try to practice right speech. I can try to practice right action. I can try to be kind to people. And if I'm really, really in a bad mood, I can lock myself in my room, which sometimes we do. But I have to accept that the transcendent realization of the unconditioned is unconditioned. It's not a quality. It's not a quality. So if you start to do practices, I recommend that you do practices where you exercise the mind in reflecting on awareness itself rather than the objects of awareness. You exercise the mind. When I say listen to sound, be the knowing, be the knowing. Sound is in awareness. What I'm doing is I'm exercising the knowing of the knowing. And I'm exercising awareness itself, being aware of awareness. And that's the gateway to the unconditioned. That's what it's about. The quality of the sound, the quality of your physical experience, the quality of your emotional experience, that draws you out, draws your attention out, which is necessary, but it's also very addictive. So, you know, you're always out, always out. So exercises that actually emphasize knowing or listening are rather rare. Most of our exercises are about doing stuff outside and accomplishing things. When I ask you to listen to sound and I say welcome to sound, receptive awareness, that's the quality of metta. If you, like, I always use sound because it's such a good sense door to play around. And so if someone is talking loudly outside the window and I'm being distracted by it, I'm trying to talk to you, then receptive awareness would be a sense of welcoming this noise, which is somewhat intrusive, negative. And that exercise would be very good because then I could apply it to my emotions. So when you have a kind of negative experience, which isn't painful, which isn't harmful, which isn't destructive, you get some negative sense experience, like a headache, like someone who is very boring at a committee meeting, or maybe some loud sound of construction work. These are very, they're not hugely negative, but they're very interesting for actually developing awareness, because then you see what does awareness mean? It allows all things. It belongs. Loud noise belongs. Boring people belong. Then your own negative emotions, you apply that to your negative emotions. Aversion belongs, but right speech. Jealousy belongs. So then you're moving back into the transcendent awareness rather than always fighting with yourself and judging yourself and all those complexities which we come up with. And then the heart starts to really feel relaxed because it's not threatened. When I first kind of started, I feel very threatened by fear or very threatened by anger because I thought, oh, I have to do something about this. I have to get rid of it. It felt so threatening, but it's not really. It's just unpleasant or just goes through the mind. So please contemplate, like, what is your inner attitude to your inner world? Are you okay with making mistakes? Are you okay with saying something that a person maybe was offended by? Assuming that you're not someone who always offends people, that could go the wrong way too. But my own character is my own conditioning is trying to make people happy, which is a disaster. So my own conditioning in family was I was the peacekeeper. And not that we were a very fighting family, but I always was sort of the youngest. And so that I can see that's a habit in me. I can see that in the way I relate with people, that I want them to be happy, but that's a wanting. And then I might think in that way, but oh, that's a personality trait, or that's a character trait, comes from childhood. Oh, okay, and I can let it go, see it arise, rather than just to be victim of all these different things. So then the silence of knowing and the compassion of knowing, I would say the kindness of knowing, allows a response to the world which is not exhausting, and it's very, very appropriate. So again, please like look at your own inner world. Is there something in your own inner world which you reject? Think you shouldn't have that. Judge yourself and all that. And is that appropriate? If you act on something, then sure, you have to try to get your act together. Don't act that way. If you speak on harmful impulses, sure, you have to develop right speech. But at the end of the day, when you have right speech and right action developed, is it okay to feel you don't like someone? Is that a problem? If you follow that you don't like someone all the time, that's a problem. If I have a perception I don't like someone and I just carry it around, that's a real problem. That's attachment. But there's the other attachment of thinking that you shouldn't have that. The middle way is that it arises and ceases. It all belongs. It's natural. Emotions are natural. They come and they go. So do exercise that capacity of it all belongs with negative things, headaches, difficult encounters, loud noises, traffic jams, appointments that have been messed up, or all the little negativities of life. It belongs. It belongs. So you're coming to a peace of mind within just the naturalness of our human existence. Just going back to Luang Por and his perceptions. He was talking with Ajahn Santi about the news, which he doesn't really like to listen to much anymore. And he's saying it was horrible 80 years ago. And it's horrible now. And people hate each other. And they hated each other then. And it's interesting perspective. And yeah. So the horrors of the world and all of that can bring the mind to a lot of negativity. And is that very skillful? Is that really, really skillful? Without being naive, foolish, not to always go to negativity, not to always dwell on negativity, to abide in a place of silence where you're not dominated by the kind of negative impulses. And then to accept that negativity within yourself is okay. That's very, very important. So that's what we mean by having compassion to yourself. Metaphor of one's own being, and that's those very difficult mind states. Many people suffer from self-doubt or self-disparagement. A lot of that comes from childhood, self-criticism, and these are very, very painful. There's a difference between assessing how you can do a job better and just being critical about whatever you did to yourself, and that self-critical thing is very, very powerful in intellectual circles. So your intellect has been trained to be critical, to find fault. But is that really the realm you want to live in? Kind of self-doubt or self-criticism. So that seems to, I think that's enough. I'll leave that for your reflection. Unmute, William. There you go. Okay.
Pandamayang Dhamma Kataya Tadu Karam Tatamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
Thank you so much, Luang Por, for a very insightful session. So I would like to now open the floor for questions and answers. Anyone's got a question? Oh, yes, Joey from Bangkok.
Hi, Joey.
Joey, can you unmute yourself so that Luang Por can hear you?
Hi, Joey.
พี่บีจ้ากราบนมัสการครับพระอาจารย์
Sabadi Mai.
สบายดีครับ it's a rainy season, so nice and cool in Bangkok right now.
All right. What's your question?
I have a question regarding what to do after we witness our thoughts and emotions. When you listen to different traditions, you have, say, the Plum Village, where it's very loving, it's very gentle. Thich Nhat Hanh always calls his emotions darling. He loves them, he caresses them. And then you have the Thai forest tradition, where it's a little bit more stern. Ajahn Chah I remember Ajahn Pasano was saying Ajahn Chah would always see his ego as a liar, and he calls it, you're a liar, you're a liar. How do you deal with the differences in approaches? Or can you just talk a little bit about the different approaches and what works for you?
Right. I mean, that's the line, Joey. What works for you, isn't it? But I think Thich Nhat Hanh was coming. I think he saw so much self-criticism and guilt in Western culture that I don't know, I haven't followed his teaching in any depth, but I suspect he introduced that more almost smarmy attitude to address the very real problem of guilt, self-disparagement, self-hatred in Western culture. But your question before your question was opened with, what do you do after? So I think, like, I suspect your emotional world is good enough. You know, you're not a bank robber, but you're not perfect, okay? So I think there's a kind of deeper way of doing this as well, is to, you know, we have the word ahankara mimankara in the Pali, and that's in the English is translated as I making, my making. So another way of looking at it is doership is ahankara, and mimankara is ownership. So the very question that I should be doing something, maybe Joey, you take off maybe mute yourself. There you go. The very question of what should I do is a question which is rooted in time and achievement and strategizing to not suffer. And what you're trying to do, I would think, from my sense of it, is to incline to the timeless. So the very idea that I am the doer and I have to do this practice to get to that result, I mean, it's a valid thing to say, no doubt about it. But also there is an opportunity to investigate the very sense of doership, ahankara, and the very sense of that I am inadequate, and you know, I've got problems, and I've got to work on myself to get to this other place where I have no problems and I'm okay. Time is relevant. There are results in time, but that underlying belief in ownership, that I am someone moving through time, is avijja. And Lopa Buddha talked a lot about avijja. Avijja pachaya sankhara. Sankhara pachaya vijnana. So what is the vijnana of avijja? It's the ego, it's the self, it's time. So if you find that your mind is like strategizing, trying to figure out what should I do, look at doership. Look at doership as an object, because it can't be a matter of time. It has to be a matter of awakening. So whatever whatever, like if Luang Por Cha says it's a liar, the idea is to awaken into the present moment that this is a thought. It's not ultimate reality. Then Thich Nhat Hanh, his way is also just to awaken that this is just an emotion. It's okay. So he's using very soft language. It should produce the same result of awakening. But notice that that's not a becoming. You're not becoming something later on. It's right in this moment. You're awakening and saying that is the practice, that is the goal right there. Whereas doership, what happens is you meditating and your mind starts to worry about work or fantasize about something. You notice it, and then I have to do something. I have to do a practice now so that I'm not thinking. Which doesn't mean you can't use techniques and practices, but the practices and techniques should be about awakening in the present moment, in the present moment, in the present moment, in the present. So it's not a matter of time. As soon as it's about me doing something, that sense of time is avijja. It is a sense of self. It is a sense of becoming. And it's subtle. It's very, very subtle. So once you, and that's actually very interesting inquiry into that sense of doership, because it's an inquiry into sense of ownership of thought. You feel that you are the thinker, and hence you should get rid of thought. And that you have to question. So say to yourself, okay, I am the thinker, I will stop thinking. Good luck. Doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because you're not the thinker. Thought arises conditioned on cause. It's paticca samuppada, it's dependent origination. So that very definition of self and thought is something that needs to be investigated, because that brings you back into avijja. And actually, you know, this line I've been using, is presence ever absent? That is addressing ownership. That an enigmatic suggestion is really pointing to the idea that I am the owner of thought, I am the thinker, to notice that actually presence was never absent. Knowing is never absent. And that going back into thought as the thinker, as the doer, as ownership, needs to be noticed in the moment of awakening. And it's a very interesting investigation. The thing about techniques and so on, they're okay, they calm the mind, they're good beginning, but there can be a sense of I am the doer of this technique to get this result. And who's the doer? What does anatta mean? You know, where is that? And where does technique fit into all of that? So without dismissing technique, that you use technique to be more present, that's all, not to get a result called more present in the future. That's time bound. So I'd suggest that whole ownership, doership, ahankara, vimukara as objects, that's very interesting, because that takes you back to silence, to silent knowing. And then use Thich Nhat Hanh's methods as a way of awakening. Use Luang Por Cha's methods as a way of awakening. Both are valid. But I did, like for myself, I found, say, Luang Por Mahabua's suggestions were too military for me. It was too much about killing and getting rid of, and I was already full of self-aversion. And I didn't have much metta for myself, full of self-criticism. So when the Thai forest monks say ka kilate or toraman kilate, okay, I can kill myself and I can torture myself, and I did it, but I wasn't a happy puppy. And it didn't work because it was coming from ownership and self. I'm not a good monk and blah, 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 blah. So it quite often the language that's presented by teachers has a cultural context. So in Isan, the Isan monks, they loved when the Ajahns beat the heck out of them. They said it was like eating hot chilies. I hate hot chilies. So it wasn't terribly effective for me, but it was effective for them. They expected it, like the forest monks in Wat Pah Pong, they expected the Ajahn to be tough and, to call the number. And myself as a Westerner, I didn't understand that culture. So when they said torture yourself, I tortured myself. And then I had a seizure. And then Luang Por Cha said, will you take it easy? So he had to develop a different kind of language for me, or many, many Westerners, And I think he started to teach much more about like compassion and it takes time. You're not going to get enlightened tomorrow. That kind of language. So Joey, you look into your own mind. What is the language that you present to yourself about who you are as a practitioner? If it's harsh, judgmental language, notice that as an object. I see that, oh, that's the quality of thought, of perception is quite harsh. How might you affect that? But doership and ownership is a very important kind of investigation or observation. All right? Yeah. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
One follow-up question, Kapajan. So would you say then that when in doubt, trust and awareness by going back to the background? Would you say that would be correct?
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. If you can do that, you're home. The issue is trust. The issue is trust. Because usually we trust in strategizing, self-view, and becoming, and all of that. Because we do it all the time. This is much more subtle and seemingly unproductive. Whereas the thing with the strategizing mind, the doer mind, it seems productive in that moment. Yeah, I'll do this and I'll get that. But is it? Is it actually productive? You don't look at that actually just back in the same soup again. You forget. And then you get this brilliant idea. Oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, and I'll do that, and I'll strategize. There's a very famous American historian. I often quote her, and she wrote about wars and generals who were stupid and make wars and so on. And she had this phrase, the conceit of a happy plan. About making war, like Putin, the conceit of a happy plan. We'll invade Ukraine, it'll all be fine. And we all have that. We all have an idea about the future. And then we take that idea, we get inspired by it. Like working out, say. You make a New Year's resolution, you're going to work out, you're going to be in shape, you're going to eat less sugar and less durian or whatever you do, right? And that feels great. Yeah, because you think you've already done it, but you haven't yet. So it's a great feeling, but actually too much down the line, you haven't done it yet. So then you get another inspiring, oh, that's great, but you haven't done it yet. So that's what the strategizing mind does. It creates this kind of really neat idea how you're going to get enlightened or not think. But you don't see there's the doership, there's the self, there's all that's happening. And you don't remember that you did the same thing last time. It's the conceit of a happy plan. Does that make sense?
Very clear. Thank you, Kapajan.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Joey.
Brenda, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Where are we? Please. Or there you go. Unmute yourself.
There. Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just noticed a repetitive pattern in myself. So whenever I watch the news, and it's like being faced with a litany of people that are going into wrong action. And these days anyways, and I find myself getting overtaken by outrage and, I think connected underneath that is fear, etc., helplessness. And one option is just to turn the darn news off and don't watch it, don't watch it a lot. And that can be helpful, but also I don't want to never watch it. So if I'm just being with my bare raw emotions and my sense perceptions then, and I'm not going into the thinking mind, I'm not going more into judgment, I'm just feeling the pure energy quality of the intense emotions. Is that the best way to work with it? And then maybe that will just go through into sort of it'll come to a peak, a crest, and it'll just kind of come down? Like, is it a good practice opportunity watching the news?
I'd throw the computer in the bathtub myself, but that's an option you probably don't want to take. Well, if you get powerful sensory impacts in your mind, that has an echo. You can't help that.
I deal with a level of PTSD, so I'm kind of triggering my nervous system watching.
Yes, yeah. So if you want to, like, I think your suggestion of less rather than more is accurate and healthy. But if you want to experiment with that, then you have to not absorb into the material of the news, but be the witness to how you are being absorbed into the news.
Okay.
So you're emphasizing the listening rather than the particular war element that you're watching or horror that you're watching. So the kind of voyeurism of modern media, it just is built to draw you into the shock and horror of what is going on. And that's what you'd have to watch, the kind of drawing in to the particular drama. And you could do that if you didn't watch it a lot.
Yeah.
So if you like fasted on watching the news for a day or two, and then you actually put it on, but you watched how compelling those images are, then you'd have a chance to look at what awareness is and the compulsions of sense experience, which could be quite interesting. You're coming, it's no longer about the drama or the horror, but it's about awareness itself. And how does awareness get preoccupied with the horribleness that is now going on in front of your digital device? But you have to do that, like fasting is a very interesting thing to do. Fasting on any kind of sense experience and being away from it, and then coming in the presence of it and witnessing awareness itself and seeing how awareness gets drawn into sense objects would be an interesting experiment. And then from that, the not doing it and seeing what's the echo, what's the rebound effect, and the echo is very, very strong. And then you could play around with it and see, well, what would it be to not get drawn into this, which is very, very hard because the images are very, very attractive in that way. That's why that exercise I do with sound, because sound is so neutral. It's very hard to do with something so compellingly awful. So do protect your mind, because just as you probably eat a balanced diet, your mind is receiving food, it's receiving nutrition, which can be very, very toxic and poisonous. So do be careful without being, you're interested in the world and you have to talk with people about the world. You have to relate socially, but make it an experiment about the knowing itself rather than the quality of the news. Reading is quite, like a more complex contextual piece is a lot better in understanding what's going on, as opposed to the spectacularism of events. And so video imagery is quite spectacular, but actually reading the context of some conflict or whatever is much more informed kind of thing to do, and much more using intelligence and understanding it. The other is, it's just very hard on the senses,
That's so helpful. It feels like bombardment. And then I go to bed and I have bad dreams.
Why?
Like I'm poisoned. It's like I'm overstimulating
Exactly.
my nervous system, the fight-flight reaction.
Yes.
And also, I work as a trauma therapist for 32 straight years. So I'm being bombarded by all the worst things that people can do to each other. Like working with, yeah.
I think you should watch cat videos. That's the best thing for you.
I think so too. And also I'm a sensitive, temperamented person to start with.
Oh no. Better read about it then, or even not. But cat videos.
Reading. I love reading.
And cat videos.
Okay. Dog
Or
videos.
camel videos might be good.
And when I do watch the news, I'm going to practice that, like for fun. Just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
notice myself getting drawn in or not, but probably
Yes.
getting drawn in. Watch myself
And-
getting wrapped up. Yeah.
But you must do that as a therapist.
I do. I have to be able to be really present with people. But
Exactly,
I find
yeah.
all my anger that I don't express as a therapist, because I can't in the moment when I'm hearing horrible things about sexual abuse and sexual assault. I mean, I do share some anger on behalf of the person as an ally, but not all of it. But when I watch the news and I see these horrible male perpetrating actions, it all comes out then, and I want to yell at the TV.
Well, that's all right. You can yell at the TV, but I think I would do cat videos and yell at the squirrels. Or
Yeah, I think I'm traumatizing my nervous system.
how do you, may I ask, how you then release all that tension in your spiritual life? How do you do it?
I just keep coming back to compassion 1,000 times, like compassion. But I have health issues. It's made me ill too. So I haven't done such a great job with it. I have a whole variety of consequences.
So maybe you should just raise cats.
I think so. I need a dog.
There you go. Start a kennel.
Therapy dog.
No therapy.
Thank you.
But
though.
do be careful of your nervous system, because it's a delicate thing. So like,
right, and we only get one. We can't send it back into the store and get it repaired.
Walmart will not accept it. You can't get a new one.
I appreciate
but also like getting a lot of, like, if the therapists I talk with, they really try to get more space in their therapeutic practices to then really observe the results of those interactions. So like myself, I don't really, very rarely do I talk with victims of trauma, but not infrequently, I meet people who have been abused and so on. So they've usually worked it through a lot before I have access or contact with them. But then I'm very careful, having spoken with someone who has, deeply held emotions or whatever. I know I'm empathetic enough. I'm going to receive a lot of that I have to give myself a lot of time to myself. And then I just let whatever perceptions, I let them come into consciousness, but witness them as objects until their volume and intensity goes away. But if I don't do that regularly. That's what we call maintenance practice sometimes. If I don't do that, then there's an accumulation of vipaka, resultant karma of having interacted in that way. And then that becomes, I become very reactive. I mean, not recently, but in the past I have. And that's very unhealthy for me or anyone else. So to like give yourself lots of space to process. I mean, you must, as therapists, you must advise each other that way, correct?
Yes. Oh yeah. And I need a lot of quiet time for walking, for yoga, for just quiet, because it's like too much. It's like overstimulation, like the images, the emotions of the other people. Like it's so much, and I'm sensitive. I always have been. So yeah, I think I need more space. I need more space.
Yes.
And more
cats. Why do you watch the news?
My husband loves to watch the news, and he doesn't get triggered. He doesn't get triggered by, and I'm interested in the issues, but when he's away, I don't watch it as much, and I think I feel better.
Right.
I think I do better when I listen to music or I listen to the birds sing and the wind blow.
I think we all do. That's why the Buddha said we should live in forests.
I think I'm going to watch the news a little bit less now.
Tell David to watch cat videos.
Okay.
50-50.
Thank you so much. I love your humor.
Okay. See you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. All right. How's that, Beta?
Oh, well, that's very nice. Thank you very much, Luang Por, for all your suggestions in dealing with various issues in life.
Beta,
Yes, Luang Por.
do you watch cat videos? Confess.
No, I don't. I don't watch much videos.
Okay.
I watch
You don't
some
need.
videos a lot, though.
Oh, there you go. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we close?
Yes, please. Can we close with the Buddha's words on loving kindness?
Right. Let's
Thank
do
you.
that. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world.
Brothers and sisters, please join us in paying respect to Luang Por. First bow, second bow, third bow. Bye-bye, Luang Por.
Okay, everyone, thank you. Be well.